Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the Good Fight Podcast, where I'll be breaking down some of the latest and greatest fights that's coming up and fights that we just happened. Looking back at this past weekend, man, it was a good round of fights. Puerto Rico, man, they took it on one on the chin. You had the Amanda Serrano loss. I actually thought she did pretty well, and it's tough to lose three fights, and they were all close. I don't know, man. I thought that was a real tough one to swallow. I thought the third fight, I thought she did pretty well, but I do see where the criticism is coming in, where she wasted a lot of punches and she was just shadow boxing with herself. I see where people are criticizing where she could have done more and maybe closed the distance. But she was also doing a good job with keeping her distance because of those headbutts, and I'm pretty sure them first two fights took a lot out of her. So I get why she fought the way she fought. And to be honest with you, I thought they both did a pretty good job. I thought it was like a 96-94 fight for Amanda Serrano, but I see the criticism. I do got to admit that there was a lot of punches that she kind of wasted and it's cool to do. There's a lot of things fighters do maybe in the first two or three, maybe even four rounds that's cool to do in those rounds, but not to carry it on later on in the fight. So like the shadow boxing where she was throwing punches and just wasting them, they were not even meant to like be a distraction. That's cool to do maybe in your first couple of rounds where you're just trying to get your foot in and trying to get the feeling and trying to get the timing down. But when you keep that going throughout a fight, it can end up costing you and maybe look lackluster to the judges. Same thing in the Canelo and Williams School fight. School threw did a ton of running. It was basically like a track star. But in the beginning, it looked decent. Like the first two, 3 rounds, it was like, okay, like I can see some strategy to that. There has to be a point where you shift doing that to actually step into them and bringing the fight to them. If you don't never do that, then it stains the rest of the fight, and then it's just going to be hard to win in the judges' eyes when you're moving like that. But going on for Puerto Rico, Edgar Berlanga, and he took a tough loss. Like, man, they knocked the dip off his chip with that fight where he took with Shiraz. He talked a lot of junk too, and it's like for him to lose in the way he lost, it was pretty bad. But shout out to the females, shout out to the wives that keeping their men's chin ups, even when they're walking out. So if you didn't peep, his girl pulled what I call a Tevin Farmer when Tevin Farmer took a loss, his girl, didn't let him keep his chin down and made him hold his chin high. So shout out to the queens that's standing by their men, even though they taking them lumps and bruises. I think he'll be back. I think a fight with him and Caleb Plant would be a good fight. They're both coming off losses. The only thing is Caleb Plant, I think it's a real good fight because Caleb Plant can really box and he's really skilled. But some of the wars he's been in are making him look like, that gas tank can get emptied quick. And it was funny because if you go back to the Edgar Berlanga fight with Shiraz, it looks like he was, he was doing well up until the point he got knocked out. Like I'm like, all right, he's boxing pretty well. But like Shiraz lullabied him to sleep, caught him with a good hook. And once that hand was low and it just kind of stayed there, that first hook froze him up and he framed him up and like bowling pins, he just knocked him down after that. Like he framed him up well with that one hook and noticed he was kind of stunned and he threw the kitchen sink behind that and it just wasn't no recovering from that. And to be honest with you, he could have recovered if he would have took the 8 count. Some of the best things you can do if you really hurt in a fight is take the full 8 count. Like get your balance together, take some deep breaths, get your thinking right. Like in that moment, think about, what you're going to do next, whether you're going to hold, whether you're going to turn in a certain direction. It's those little things that'll keep you in a fight, and that's really a championship mentality. But Edgar Berlanga, I think, a lot of people feel like he was caught up with the fame, caught up with the lifestyle. So it's like, even in that, being in his hometown and getting dropped and clipped in front of all those people, it wasn't like that Canelo moment, but it was more like a moment where, oh, I just got clipped. Oh, let me try to get up and not look as hurt. But then it round up him getting knocked down again. And really, they could have stopped the fight at the second knockdown. Luckily, he got saved by the bell after getting up from the second knockdown, but he was really no good after that. So when the fifth round comes out and he tries to trade a little bit and doesn't immediately go into holding, because when you get concussed like that, you have to hold until you regain some strength, regain your legs. Because if your legs not under you going down. And the way he got clipped so bad, you just knew he was going down at some point or not. So all in all, I thought it was a great fight. Backing it up that evening to Shakur and Zepeda, that was a great fight as well. Shakur really showed some heart in that fight. He showed his skill in that fight. And it's not like, I don't know, people have labeled him as a runner. And it's not like he always runs, but like that really showed how deep his tool bag is. And, I thought the moment with him and his daughter and he's getting interviewed was, pretty funny because she was like, you almost got knocked out. He's like, what are you talking about? There was a moment where Zepeda caught him with a great jab and he was off balance. He looked like he was ready to go down from it. But for the most part, he fought with his back against the ropes. He fought taking angles, and he really stepped to Zepeda most of the fight. And I thought Zepeda did good from rounds like 2 through 4. I think he swept those 3 rounds in my book. But after the fifth and the sixth may could have been a toss-up round. And then, but after that, from the sixth, seventh round going on, you could really tell that his game plan, well, okay, is like no more leaning against the ropes. It's time to take it to you and show that I'm going to be the clear winner in this fight. And that's what real champions do. They make those adjustments in a fight, and that's really the separation. So, that's what it takes to really be at the championship level. And thinking about, some of the fighters that fought, even thinking about Berlanga, like, can he ever really be a championship fighter? I think maybe against the right opponent. And I don't know, he got to take it serious. Like, it's not saying that he don't take it serious. He probably trains, does, everything that he needs to do. But sometimes you can have your head stuck in the limelight. And it's almost like you tasted success, but you really ain't taste the fullness of success. Because the fullness of success is getting that world title, is defending it a couple of times. But if you don't, if you lose that hunger too quick, it's like if you get the limelight before you actually get the credentials that go with it, it can hurt your hunger. And you got to stay hungry, because somebody that really wants to be a world champ, who, maybe since 6, 7, 8 years old, always wanted to be a world champ, that hunger, that somebody that sees your spot and know that you're the next stepping stone to getting there, they're going to come in that ring and try to knock your block off, take your head out, flat out. Like, you can't be playing games, boxing, you can play football, you can play basketball, but you don't play boxing, because it's serious like that. Folks don't play. Like, I thought those was some really good fights over the weekend. And I'm just trying to think a little bit more about the undercard. Even going back to the women, I thought Alicia Baumgartner, she did a great job. I thought she boxed well. Um, I think she was landing the more clean, effective punches during her fight. Her fight, people viewed it as close, but it was like, you only got 10 rounds, and you got 2-minute rounds. Um, so you really got to show the separation. So it's like, I think for me, like from what I saw from her fight, like she did pretty good at, doing clean punches. I think she could have did better, and that's why she gave herself maybe like a B plus, B minus. But at the same time, when you got somebody that, you hit them on the chin and you find out, hey, they're not going nowhere, because they got the same self belief in themselves as you got in yourself. You know, it's crazy. I guess when you look in the mirror and you finally see a junkyard dog on this other side of you, you realize, oh, this is gonna be a long night. And I guess those are the times where your training camp, becomes the most important, because if you haven't put the work in, if you ain't, if you ain't put the miles in the bank, if you ain't really you know, put the sparring rounds and put the training in and the conditioning. If you ain't really locked in mentally, that's when the moments you're gonna find out you're bankrupt in the ring, because you ain't you ain't put the time in that it takes to that's gonna get you to them championship rounds and get you through them. But I think overall, I think it's a good, it was a great weekend for boxing. Looking at some fights that's coming up, you got the Dubois versus Usyk rematch. I think that's going to be a good fight. That's coming up next weekend. Um, for the most part, Usyk has been dominating the heavyweight division, but I do remember that body shot, even though they got called a low blow. It it always make you wonder, like, if it really had landed a few inches up, you know, would a Usyk have beaten the count? Was the fact that the referee was calling it low, did that affect how long he rolled around? I don't know. In my opinion, certain fighters that really got that dog in them, depending on the situation, they always gonna respond. So in my mind, to a certain degree, if he knew the ref wasn't calling it a low blow, he would have found a way to get up. But um, with that being said, that doesn't take anything away from Dubois, because he's had pretty much of a heck of a run in returning to getting that spot. So, but I do think Usyk is on another level. I'm seeing him wear guys mentally out. Anytime you can win, you can get two fights off of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. So we're talking about really somebody that's pound for pound, because he's been in the undisputed at the previous weight class as well as at heavyweight. So it's like he's shown his grit against multiple times against multiple champions. So I think he's really just trying to finish etching his name out in the history books. Looking forward, we also got the Canelo fight coming up, Canelo versus Crawford. It's like my heart is rooting for Crawford, but my head says Canelo. In my opinion, in order for Crawford to really have, you know, the best chance at beating Canelo, I don't think he should come in at 167 like a normal 168 pounder. Sometimes they come in at, 166, 167. In my opinion, it's almost like he should be trying to make this fight at middleweight. Why? Because some of that speed and agility is going to be the difference maker. If Floyd wasn't a big guy when he fought Canelo. A lot of times, even though folks fight 1 to 2 or 3 weight classes fight night higher, Floyd fought more at his true weight. But I think something that the big Charlo mentioned about little Charlo is that putting on that weight it really affected him in that fight. He wasn't as fast as he wanted to be. And people, if you've never really been an athlete, you might not even understand it. It's like your body, you can be used to mentally doing something, but your body sometimes won't allow you to do something in a ring if anything is off. It's almost like the formula is off. So like you're trying to do things that you could do at 154, but all of a sudden you can't do it at 168 because the extra weight, as well as all those things are playing a factor. So I just hope that he keeps his speed and agility, because some of those are the things that will allow him to hit and not be hit. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll go in on a further in-depth breakdown, but that was my 2 cents on that take. I just hope he comes in at 160 even, and maybe he rehydrates a little bit higher than that, but he stays lean and he stays fast and he stays sharp for that fight, because that's probably his best chance at probably beating Canelo, if he can stay light on his feet, pop that jab, um, freeze Canelo up. But to be honest with you, man, he's a dog, and his chin has pretty much been tested by everybody in the game. I know when you look at his resume, people may say, he fought some of these fighters at the right time, and that's true. You know, when he was with Golden Boy, they moved him perfectly, to be honest with you. And he rode the hype of Floyd, just being on his undercards plenty of times. But there's no doubt in his resume is pretty much the best in boxing because he got a chance to fight the previous generation in this current generation. So he's like that bridge. And I see why Crawford is hungry to put him on his resume because he's the last person that can bridge the gap between the old generation and the new generation. So a win over him would probably, it's not going to make Crawford the greatest of all time. Just being honest. But it would make Crawford the greatest of our time. That's just reality because it's hard to gauge them guys that, fought back in the Ali and Frazier's days. And, people said getting hit by Joe Frazier was getting like hit by a truck. So, I mean, you know, there, there's nothing we can do with that. Those guys were great and called the greatest of all time for a reason. But I do think he, puts himself on the Mount Rushmore of this generation with a win. Well, that's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in. This will be the good fight. Hopefully, I'll have more takes, more breakdowns, have some folks on, and we can chat and chop it up and talk more about boxing. Till then, peace.